The biggest story surrounding the San Francisco 49ers right now is about the defensive coordinator and who that is going to be in the future. Obviously, there are some big name candidates, and we have some rumors already floating around about Brandon Staley. But Greg Papa went on the Rich Eisen podcast and actually gave some phenomenal insight. And I actually think he could be the source of the Brandon Staley rumor that was put out by Pro Football Talk the other day. I think they didn't cite anyone, but if you listen to this interview, it feels like, hey, this could be the source right here. So listen to Greg Papa kind of talk about the situation with Steve Wilks and potential connection with Brandon Staley, but we're also going to hear as well something about Bill Belichick, which is really interesting. But first, take a listen to Greg Papa on kind of how this whole situation came to be and how we could potentially see it move forward.
Were you surprised? Actually, let me rephrase that. If they had won, would Steve Wilks still be the DC today?
Well, to your first question, I'm not surprised at all. And had they won the game, I think there's a strong chance that Kyle makes a change anyway. There was just a disconnect with Steve from the beginning, and I think it's no fault of Steve's. He's a very impressive human being. When I first met him and did a lengthy, a panel with the season ticket holders in front of thousands of people, he was extremely impressive, cerebral, very much I think a head coaching kind of guy, a CEO. Maybe he's better served to be a head coach than he was as a DC with this particular team. But it's just, you got to understand, Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans raised Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and Nick Bosa. And it just was more of an internal way of which they did things here. And it was going to be tough. I was a little surprised that Kyle went outside the building to hire Steve. But what he was trying to duplicate, Andrew, was what the Niners did, George Seifert did in the early 90s when Mike Holmgren left to be the coach of the Packers. They brought in Mike Shanahan, Kyle's dad, to tweak that Bill Walsh, Mike Holmgren offense. And Mike lived in a hotel. Kyle and his mom, Peggy, weren't even there for 3-4 months. And he just watched every tape, every, ounce of film and all the audio from Coach Walsh and Holmgren and put his own spin on it. And they had heartbreaks. They lost to the Cowboys. How about them Cowboys game in 92 and 93 in Dallas before they finally got the monkey off their back in 94. So Kyle was looking for that in Steve Wilks. He holed up in a hotel when he moved out, about a year ago at this time. And for whatever reason, there was it just didn't connect. I think a lot of it was they asked Coach Wilks to learn the Niner terminology and calling plays on defense is not like Kyle's 3-paragraph offense. You can call it, a defensive play. Anaheim is their call for a cover 3, which they run a lot. But it was more, Steve, come in and run our defense and make your subtle tweaks. And maybe he would have made more. Had he gotten past this year, he would have made more in year 2. And like Mike Shanahan, been able to figure it all out at some point and win a Super Bowl. But it just didn't work for a lot of different reasons. And I think I felt, halftime of the Lion game and the championship game down 24-7, there was going to be a change made. They came back and won that game. And then I think it's a broader, say you just get Mahomes down on the ground on that 4th and 1. You make one play, you win the Super Bowl. It would have been harder to make a change, but I think there was a disconnect that spoke more than just one game. It wasn't that. So now the question is, what does Kyle do? Does he want to run that? It's not like every single snap is cover 3 defense, but that's basically what they major in, and then they adjust off of that. That's what Saleh ran almost every snap in the early days when we went to the Super Bowl in 19. And then, with D'Amico made a little more changing where he do more, cover 2 on one side, cover 4 on the other, and, mix in 3 and a little more 1. So we'll see if he wants to stay married to that. I think he does, but, if you go outside of the building and you talk to somebody like Mike Vrabel, now are they going to change to a 3-4 defense and ask Nick to buzz out in coverage like the Chargers do Joey Bosa? I don't think they'll do that. So the question is, do you want to go outside the building, which is intriguing because you have some of the greatest defensive coaches available that have been, maybe they're overqualified. You're really going to, get Bill Belichick to take this job or Pete Carroll or Mike Vrabel. I think more realistically, Brandon Staley would be someone.
But he's a 3-4 guy.
Yeah, he's a Fangio guy. It's
right.
more of a cover 4. Yeah, so that's up to Kyle and just knowing him and talking to him over the years, I think he does want to continue with the same defense, but he has talked to Fangio in years past about running the defense. So if he does want to bring in a guy who's a disciple of Lord Fangio, Staley would be the guy.
So you heard him talk about Brandon Staley. And again, I think that's where the Pro Football Talk got their league circles thing from because, listen, Greg Papa is super connected within that organization. Greg Papa knows ball. Greg Papa's phenomenal. I for some reason, some fans have it out against Greg Papa, potentially because he used to be with the Raiders. But I've always had the utmost respect for Greg Papa, even when he was with the Raiders. I would always joke with my Raider buddies, like that's the only good thing that you guys got going for you is Greg Papa. He's a guy that I've always respected for his football knowledge in the broadcast game, and he's very closely tied to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, so he knows what's going on. He's very tapped in. So for him to kind of say and make the connection between Brandon Staley and that possibility, it could be something that we have to just pay attention to. I know a lot of fans don't want Brandon Staley. It's probably the most unpopular candidate right now for the 49ers defensive coordinator position. But hey, it could be something that could actually happen. So we'll see. But I know a lot of fans want to see Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel. And so also, Greg Papa gives some great insight into the connection and relationship that Kyle and John have with Bill Belichick and how it could be a possibility. Take a listen right here.
You mentioned Belichick. Obviously, that's been kicked around. That seems farcical, though. He wouldn't. Would Kyle make the call?
You mean as far as if Belichick's on the staff?
Yeah, I mean, I've already seen it written. Would Kyle Shanahan pick up the phone and call Bill Belichick and say, "Do you want to be defensive coordinator?" That sounds insane.
They have a relationship. They text back and forth. When Jimmy Garoppolo was traded to the Niners by Belichick, it was Belichick reaching out to Kyle, and obviously John Lynch. They've made other trades and they've talked. So maybe you do it through a intermediary or an agent. You don't want to offend him. But he was a great defensive coordinator. I mean, the two greatest games ever coordinated in history is when he beat the Niners in the 1990 championship game and the Leonard Marshall hit on Joe, and then what he did to the Bills in Super Bowl 25 playing nickel the whole game. I mean, he loves defense. That would be up to him. You probably know him a little bit. I mean, does he want to go into TV? Does he want to come in and coach defense for a year? I don't think it'd be insulting to reach out to him, but would he want to do it? If he wanted to do it, hell, go at it. And then the question would be if he's on the staff, Kyle's still the head coach, but Belichick knows the pecking order. I mean, when he was with Parcells, there was a lot of snapping there, going back and forth. He knows how a structure is work. He's respectful of his job. Now, would he want to do it? I'm not going to speak for him, but he could come here and win a Super Bowl. And then also, maybe take some of the Niner offensive coaches with him when he goes to his next stop or players that are going to be available. I'm not going to speak for Coach Belichick. That's up to him. I think Pete Carroll would be more of a natural fit because with Belichick, he likes to vary his fronts. It'd be a very different defense. I'm not saying he has to run a 3-4 but Bill does vary things, which Kyle may be open to. I mean, I've spoken to Kyle many times about Bill Belichick. He's the best defensive coach of maybe of all time, certainly of recent years. So he has great respect for him. There's no doubt. It's glowing, and Mike Shanahan does as well. They went at each other a lot, but I think that's just as far as a structure, you'd have to change things, and ultimately, whoever the name is. You want them to get the most out of your players. So what's the best defense to run for Fred and Dre and Nick and Charvarius Ward and Diamondor Lenore and Talanoa Hufanga? That's who you're trying to serve. But Pete Carroll, the defense the Niners are running and has since Kyle's been the head coach.
It's Pete's defense.
Seattle defense.
Yeah.
It's Seattle's. And he's the guy who did it. So he got away from it a little bit the last couple of years. He's from the Bay Area. He used to be a defensive coordinator of the Niners. In fact, when Mike Shanahan left to become the head coach in Denver, I think he moved into Pete Carroll moved to, I don't want to say Mike's house, but then I think the same school district. They all just kind of swapped. And Pete's from here. He's from Marin, Greenberry, and so I mean, does Pete want to do that though? He's been coaching as the head coach level for 20 years. He hasn't run a defense since he was with the Niners in the mid '90s. So I don't know. I mean, Mike Vrabel may still want to be ascending. They do have internal candidates. I think the one people aren't talking about, obviously, Chris Kasarik, the D-line coach, Johnny Howland, the linebacker coach, Daniel Bullock's the secondary coach. But there's a guy on the staff, Nick Sorensen, who was with Pete Carroll in Seattle when they won the championship and they won the Super Bowl 10 years ago. And he did a number of things on that staff, special teams, and then he segued over. He did play DB in the NFL, and he's very instrumental. Just watching him run the defense on, walkthrough Saturdays and scout preparations. He's the one who's really hands-on quite a bit. But he's never, run a defense before. It'd be somewhat of a leap of faith. But at the same time, neither did D'Amico Ryans. He had a good idea he could do it, but D'Amico was a great linebacker and a linebacker coach. So it'll be intriguing to see which way Kyle goes. First of all, do you want to go internal, external, inside the building, outside, and do you want to change the structure of the defense at all, or do you want to stay predominantly being a cover 3 based defense?
And then if it's Pete or Vrabel or Belichick, then I want the cameras in there for Hard Knocks, because that would be must see TV.
No, we wouldn't have to. We went to the Super Bowl last year.
I know, but
we don't meet the requirements.
still just do it.
I know,
which they wouldn't do it.
That.
When I've talked about Bill Belichick potentially being the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, these are some of the things that I've also talked about as well, is the relationship. There is an actual relationship there. And again, when people are like, oh, why would Bill Belichick want to be a defensive coordinator? He's been a head coach for so many years and arguably the greatest head coach of all time with how many Super Bowls he's won. Why would he want to be a defensive coordinator? Well, it's like, well, what are the other options? There are no head coaching positions. So it's a game of would you rather. Would you rather be the defensive coordinator for Kyle Shanahan in a system and where you would likely have full control of the defense, or would you like to sit on your couch all season? Which opportunity is going to lead to a head coaching job next year? I'm sure if you were able to go to the 49ers for 1 year in a win now year and help the 49ers get over the hump, you would have a head coaching opportunity next year. I can't say the same if you were just going to sit on your couch and, just wait. I mean, there's no, like, Bill Belichick is 71. That is kind of a guy that doesn't have time to wait around. So why not? Why not? If he still wants to coach, if he's same thing applies to Pete Carroll. Is, hey, there's no head coaching jobs opening this year. So if you want to be in the game and you want to coach, here's a great opportunity. So it's going to be fascinating to see. But I did think that Papa's kind of takes on all of this is the best insight that we've heard so far. And he's also the closest to Kyle Shanahan that we've heard speak about this. So I liked what he had to say. What do you guys think? Where do you think everything lies? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.